Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today for Business and Life Insights. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Mark Kasperowicz. He's a data security expert and advisor, and he actually works alongside Privageo, a high-end security company. He works all across the country and around the world, and he'll tell you more about that. But before I introduce him and let him talk, and you'll hear a lot from him. There's a lot to learn from Mark. He's going to delve into the critical questions of data security and data privacy and more, offering insights from his experience. Privageo is a company he's associated with now. They specialize in helping organizations navigate the complex landscape of data regulations, developing tailored strategies to mitigate risk and enhance security. So, Mark, let's just dive right in. Thank you again so much for being my honored guest today. I'm really privileged and feel very grateful to you for sharing your valuable time with us. And
thank you, Nanya. Yeah, the privilege and the gratitude is all mine. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on stage. Thank you.
All right, you're very welcome. So would you take us to how you came to be the expert in data and technology? What moved you in this direction?
Okay, well, thanks for that. Thanks for that question, Nalinia. So, and it's really great how you feature folks in the the business that you're in, as well as in the intersections and part of the community and all the stakeholders. Really, what a great value you provide to the community, and we appreciate it. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
So a brief history and how I got to the data side. I actually started in the data side many years ago in my IT career at a pharmaceutical company. I was going to say local pharmaceutical company. It's based in Irvine. It's called Allergan, and Allergan Pharmaceuticals is owned by AbbVie now, but they're in the same location there on DuPont and Von Karman in Irvine. So started in the IT career, and then went off into several other directions. After leaving Allergan, I went to Apple Computer. I worked at Fujitsu. I worked at some startups, but always with a tie to the information technology IT space. And then most recently, about a year ago, I reconnected with two friends of mine. So Steve Curler and Brad Kelso. They're the founders of Privageo, and you'll hear in just a few minutes, how it started and why. But it was an outgrowth of a new law that was passed in California called the CCPA. We'll cover that a little bit in detail later. But Privageo was started by Steve and Brad to help organizations deal with this new requirement for data privacy. And so I reconnected with Steve after leaving the company I was with a year ago, and started working with Brad and Steve to get the message out to organizations about their need and how they need to manage private information and what the laws and regulations are, and some of the things that they probably don't even know about that they need to take care of.
Awesome. Right. Oh, and we can't know everything, especially in the really fast changing world. The technology is what a roller coaster ride it is taking us on. You're shaking your head, you're nodding. So what have I just said that resonates with you?
Yes.
That's so true. Okay, good. What a wild and exciting ride. Okay, so we're here to talk about data privacy and data security. Can you define for us what those two terms mean?
Sure, you bet. Data privacy relates to generally as defined by entities like the government or regulatory agencies, is around personally identifiable information. They call it PII. And PII has any kind of information that identifies you or me, or could potentially identify you or me. So attributes where people, if they knew enough about me, could actually figure out who I am. And so that easy things like the name, date of birth, the address, social security number, email address, but also biometric data and perhaps even geographic data about my travels. And there are some examples of data that seemed innocuous, but based on, but used to combine with other information, was used to identify individuals and actually find out where they live and even more about them. So data privacy governs the privacy of that information and gives us as consumers and employees the ability to manage that data, to own the data and manage it, and work with organizations, companies that we deal with, and ask them to provide what they know about us and delete what they don't need. So that's the data privacy part. And I hope I answered that question. I can't hear you, Nalinia, and I wonder if we lost our connection somehow.
Hi, Mark.
Hi,
Hi. We had a little glitch or a little. He got disconnected, but you're back. All right.
Okay, wonderful.
So we'll pick up where you left off, and thank you so much for all of us for being persistent.
Oh, no worries. I hope people have. And now I hear an echo, and I wonder if I don't have two sessions going.
Oh, you do have two sessions. I see you. Okay.
I think the echo's gone. Is that correct?
Okay. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yes. This is good.
So, your question was about data privacy and data security, and I started to answer that, and I think that's when I suddenly went backstage. So from a data privacy standpoint, any information about an individual, be a consumer or an employee, that identifies us, it's called personally identifiable information, PII, that identifies us, like full name, date of birth, social security number, etc. But any information that could be used to identify us. So sometimes you start out strictly with an address, and the person who is, let's say that they're a data marketer, and if they have an address because something's been shipped to me, they can look in other public records and figure out who I am and identify me. So sometimes, the address isn't classified as PII. So any personally identifiable information falls into the data privacy component of regulations and guidelines. The data security, you can't talk about data privacy without talking about data security. You and I were chatting a few days ago and then earlier today about all the data breaches that are going on. Well, the personally identifiable information needs to be secured as well. And the important thing is, one of the important things is, you need to know when there's been a security breach from a security standpoint. What data was taken? How sensitive was the data? Was it just name and email, or was there a bank account and social security number? If it's data that was taken, stolen, that is about minors, some agencies triple the fines that you'll get if it was minors' data that was taken. So whose data? And if you don't know whose data, you may have to contact everybody and compensate everybody. So you have to have a level of detail about the data in order to maintain the security of the data. So they go hand in hand.
All right. Wow. So, and thank you for that perspective too, Mark. And so do you have a sense of how severe um, the data hacking is today, especially for businesses?
Yeah, so with Privageo, we're in the business of data privacy and data security. We don't resell any solutions in the cybersecurity space. We recommend trusted partners that we've worked with in the past and continue to work with. So, just that caveat that this is an unbiased view, we're not promoting any particular software solution, but we do help organizations figure out what data they have and try to make it secure, and then we'll advise them on their cybersecurity piece. But to answer your questions, in reality, the number of attacks hasn't increased lately. It's ongoing. It is always there and constant. What's happened is we hear about the big breaches. And for example, let's say 4 weeks ago, you and I might have been talking and we might have scratched our head and said, oh, I haven't heard about a data breach in a while. It must be going down. And then all of a sudden the CrowdStrike issue came out, where CrowdStrike, that is supposed to be managing cybersecurity for organizations, they had a small glitch which exposed organizations to the potential for attack. And so we think, oh, it just happened. But no, it goes on all the time. There are big national players like China and Russia and others. And then there are individuals sitting in their basement, apparently, who are trying to hack you and me just for the fun of it. So it isn't increasing, but it's not decreasing, and it is constant and pervasive.
Right. And the airlines were on the ground for days.
Right. And ironically, that wasn't a security breach. That was just a software update glitch, but it exposed organizations to two things. One is they were actually exposed to additional breaches, because once the bad guys hear, hey, you're down, you're using backup systems that you used to use 5 years ago, which are less secure, that's when they'll attack. And then the other thing that happened is that, we realized, we can't depend on one solution, because if that one solution goes down, then everything goes down.
All right. So you need to have secondary and tertiary backups.
Yes.
Of the data. So data backup. So that's another element.
Well, yeah, data backup, but also data backup, but restore. You need to be able to restore it once you backed it up. And you also have to, you really, as an organization, large organizations need to have a location that they can fail over to. So as soon as something bad happens, you fail over to your other site that's running in parallel, all the things that you're running normally. And sometimes you and I, the consumer, don't even know what's happened, because it's just switched systems from maybe what was running in California to now the servers that are running in Nevada, and we didn't even know it. So you have to have a failover. You also have to be able to deal with the fallout, and this comes from the more recent cybersecurity, the CrowdStrike Microsoft issue. People get mad, and so you have to be able to respond. So there's a whole PR and response item, and then you have to know what data is involved if it was a breach, so you can reach out to the correct people and tell them. Just in the past 6 weeks, I received 2 letters in the mail about major security breaches that with services that I use. And these services knew that my data was affected, therefore they knew that they should send me the letter. And it cost them less to narrow it down to, let's say, 1,000 people that were breached, as opposed to the 100,000 that are their clients, because to each of us 1,000, they offered 12 months of cybersecurity protection, right? That's expensive. If you had to offer it to all 100,000 customers, that would be a lot. But if you knew who got breached, and it was only 1,000, you limited your expense that way.
Oh, yes. So it can get very expensive to even take care of the reparations afterwards and to mediate the damage. Wow. So for the small business person, now what kinds of backup systems and what kinds of security modules and or software or services should they would you recommend that they?
Okay, so great question. Let me answer it in a two-part way, if that's okay, Nalinia.
Of course, please.
So I'll come back to what small businesses might need, but I wanted to start with something very important to small to medium businesses in the privacy space, specifically. So way back several years ago, something in Europe happened. It was called GDPR, and I know you're aware of it because we've spoken about it, Nalinia. So GDPR, so it went into effect back in 2018, and it was called the General Data Protection Regulation, and it was a big deal because all of a sudden the EU, the only group of countries, was offering specific rights to consumers about their data, and there were 8 specific rights that they outlined. And as usually happens, California was the first in the U.S. because they jump on these innovative things frequently. Was the first to say, oh, we need something like that too. So our lawmakers passed what was called the CCPA, the California Consumer Protection Act. And that took effect in I'm looking at it right now, January of 2020. Mm-hmm. And so that gave us consumers a lot of rights. And the reason that's important, even to small businesses, small and medium businesses, is that we as consumers can contact any business that we work with and ask them to produce the information that they have on me, the personally identifiable information I mentioned. So I submit what's is typically called a DSAR, which is a request for data, and that organization has 45 days to respond. Now, if it's too complicated for them, they can ask for an extra 45 days and notify me. But if I go to any organization and perhaps you work with small to medium businesses that have a lot of consumers, I can demand, hey, what are you keeping on me? And then you have 45 days to respond. But the kicker is this. I then say, oh, okay, you can keep my mailing address. You can keep the one credit card on file that I'm using to purchase from you. But the fact that I like purple shoes and that, that I tend to buy things out of season, you need to delete all of that. Now, they had to tell you that they had all that, by the way. Oh. And how do they capture that? They capture that by putting cookies on their website and pixel trackers on their website. And as you go from their website to another, they're tracking where you went. So they have a lot of information. Many organizations, even small ones, have a lot of information about you and I. And they must divulge everything that they have. And then I can ask them to delete what is not necessary. And so one of the things, to answer your question in 2 parts, that even small businesses need to know is that the CCPA is in place. And by the way, it was strengthened by a measure that we all voted on here in California. It was one of the initiatives, CPRA, California Privacy Rights Act, which was took effect in 23. It strengthened that the organizations need to know what data they have. They need to be able to produce the data. The other thing they need to know is they have to have a cookie policy. Now, when you and I go to websites, frequently the first thing we see at the bottom is we use cookies, and then it says you agree or disagree, or you acknowledge the fact that we told you. And then the better websites give you a choice, like, okay, only use the necessary cookies. And then there's this really, really important toggle that you should start looking for and immediately turn off. And the toggle says, do not sell my data. Small businesses need to know that if they don't have that notice on their website, and if they don't allow customers to choose, don't sell my data, then they can get in trouble, not only with regulatory agencies, but with litigators. So there are litigators who are contracting with organizations, usually offshore, that hit thousands of websites a day and look for these messages that are missing or incorrect, and they're launching lawsuits if they're litigating. It takes me back to when ADA, the Americans with Disability Act, was passed, and litigators were driving around looking for stores that didn't have ramps, right? And they were suing people. That's happening right now with the CCPA and CPRA. So businesses need to be aware that the regulations exist, that if an agency doesn't go after them, then a litigator probably might. So they need to know what data they have, who's managing it, where it's stored, and how to respond when somebody asks for it. And then the second part of that is they need to have, an organization needs to have some kind of a software that is managing their cybersecurity. And it can't be just the part-time IT person that you contract with and you call them whenever Windows breaks down. You need to look at the right software that protects you against an attack, and then the right solution that helps you recover from that attack. So they need that, software or a service. There's affordable services around that will manage all of that for you. You don't even have to license software. They'll manage the entire, it's called, they have their own SOC, their own security location that looks out for their customers. So you need to know where your data is and be able to produce it when people ask. And then secondarily, you really ought to have a cybersecurity solution in place that protects you, but also is able to respond when something happens.
Right. So getting back to websites that don't have this cookie security option, the penalty, and the American with Disabilities Act, also there's another issue. There was kind of distantly related, but websites I heard that do not comply, for every instance, it could be as much as $3,000.
That is correct. You've done your homework. That is correct. Now think about that. Even a small business, a business has hundreds of customers, and for every non-compliance, $3,000. That adds up very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does, and yes, and then not to mention the having to appear in court and building a case.
Well, yeah, it's reputation as well now, because the CCPA is managed through the Office of the Attorney General. And then the CPRA created an agency called the California Privacy Protection Agency, and they can go to the Attorney General for civil enforcement. So think about that. The California Privacy Protection Agency was formed, and you think they're all just sitting around waiting for something to happen? No, they are looking for violators. They want to shine. They want to be able to report the fact that they're working, that they're finding violators and they're finding them. So they want to make an example of organizations. So that's the other thing, is being in court, paying the fine, but being in the newspapers about this organization not only violated personal identifiable information, but it included minors. Oh, yes. That of minors, right? Oh my gosh, I don't want that in the paper.
No. All right. Very important things to think about and to manage.
They are. Yeah. Yes. But let me go back to something I started with, though, Nalenia. You're so kind to have this interactive conversational approach. So I've known Brad and Steve for a long time, and they've been in various businesses. When CCPA was passed, and then CPRA followed, I followed what they were doing, and I worked with them on a couple of side engagements. What I loved about their approach is that the Privageo doesn't make it complicated. The entry level to help an organization come up with a roadmap is very affordable and is done in a day or two. So think about that. A small to medium business can, in a one-day session, as long as all the right people are attending and the data that is needed has been collected, they can have a roadmap for their data privacy piece in 1 or 2 days. One day to collect the information, and then the next day to present it and let them know about the roadmap. So I love the fact that Steve and Brad are making this simple. You and I are talking about this from a, oh my gosh, my head is exploding standpoint. But luckily, there's organizations like Privageo that handhold and bring people to a solution really quickly and easily.
That's brilliant.
It is, yeah, it's great. And it's great, good
great customer service, great responsiveness.
Right.
Yes, it's so needed.
Yeah, I'm looking over at my screen here because if you go to the Privageo website, and by the way, a lot of this information is just on the website, and you can get at it, and you'll see that they try to be helpful. But there's a wheel that you go to that on the Privageo website that shows the route and the pieces that Privageo will address. Consent and response, data management, data security, third-party risk. All of those are important components, and you can start anywhere. You can say, I need to figure out how to respond to a DSAR that Mark just talked about, which would be the consent and response. And you can say, hey, Steve Brad, I only want to work on that. That's all the time I have. That's all the money I have. Or at least I want to be compliant. But you might be an organization that, or people you work with, already have that handled. Say, okay, we bought the software, it's managing our DSARs, but wait, what's this third-party risk thing? So the third-party risk thing we haven't talked about.
No.
We've implied, and that is an organization that uses third parties. It could be suppliers. Okay, and let's say there's one of the Privageo clients is a medium-sized restaurant chain that's based in Southern California. And of course, they have a lot of suppliers that supply all the food. And with that, with those suppliers, they have to share certain information. And sometimes the information that is shared is more than they really should be sharing. And the supplier, the third party, has information, PII, that they really shouldn't have, and that they don't know that they need to take care of it. And sometimes these suppliers gather the PII on purpose so they could sell it to data brokers.
Oh boy.
So another component that an organization, even a small one, needs to think about is, hey, I have these third-party suppliers. I need to figure out what data they have for me, and I need to inform them what they can and can't do with it. And then I definitely need to find out if it's being sold to data brokers. There are large organizations that you and I use on a regular basis that other organizations use, like a payroll service company. Mm-hmm. You can, a large organizations that uses a payroll service company, if they haven't read the fine print, they should, because chances are in the fine print of the contract, that payroll services company says, we have the right to sell data that we collect from you to data brokers.
Oh, yes.
Isn't that scary?
That is scary. So yes, a lesson learned, read the fine print and look for specific.
Yeah, read the fine print and think about the, the third party risk. The other place, to go back to your theme about small to medium business, CPRA, which followed CCPA in California, it applies to employees as well. So if you're a business to business, you're not a business to consumer, and you think, oh, I got this covered. I don't deal with any consumers, but you're a sizable enough business. Any employee that works for you can also submit a DSAR and say, what information do you have on me? Show it. And frequently that information is not in our quote unquote HR folder, is it? There's just a few things in the personnel folder, but an organization keeps more information about us than probably we want them to, and an employee can make that request as well. 45 days to respond. You have to delete what is not necessary, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And for how long? Is there a retention policy that is recommended? Best practices retention policy on that type of information?
The guidelines don't specify, how long there's not a guideline within CCPA and CPRA that says how long things should be kept. That is generally a legal issue, probably managed by other laws. But you mentioned in the write-up that you kindly did about our presentation here, the SIST and NIST frameworks, they have, those are really, really good frameworks that that give good guidelines for how long to keep information, and then also how quickly delete information that you really don't want. There's a legal exposure to having information for too long. So good question.
Alrighty then. So it depends on the industry then. The retention.
It depends on the industry, depends on the need, the business, right? So if I'm a payroll processing company, I need to keep all the data about the payroll the individuals, as long as they are employees, right? And then depending on the industry, like you said, and then probably there's a timeline that I'm committed to, that I keep their data after they left employment, so that they can come back and say, hey, I need historical information, or the company that I used to work for and left, they need historical information. So there are guidelines for that. But beyond that, I'm sure the guideline says after 5 years, 3 years, X years, delete the data. So it does depend on the industry.
All right. Okay, very good. Thanks for the clarification. Let's switch gears a little bit. And
okay.
So phishing is where I've been told not to open up email that is from someone I don't recognize or has a suspicious looking attachment on it. So can you speak a little bit about phishing and email?
Yes. Betcha. So there are two things about phishing. One is, you described it very well, and that is, so I think everybody knows, but just to reiterate, phishing is just a way to try to doing some kind of a security attack on an organization. An outside email comes in, and it looks safe, and it has a link or an attachment, and we click on it. And what it does is it launches software that goes not necessarily into our laptop or computer, but somewhere on the network. And so the phishing attack is coming through what's called an endpoint. My laptop that I'm using right now for this session is an endpoint on the network. I'm logged into Privageo using a secure connection, but I am an endpoint. If I click on the wrong link and give that and open up the network to some kind of an attack, it can go and sit on a server. And so phishing is a key way that organizations get in. It's one of the easiest things to take care of, though. It is the one that fails most frequently. We as employees and users are the ones that click on the thing that we're not supposed to. But it's also, there's so much software available to manage that an organization can just license some software as a service. It works in conjunction with Outlook or wherever you're using, and it looks for phishing emails and sets them aside and notifies you, hey, I've quarantined these things. Why don't you go take a look at these and see if they're legitimate? It gives you a list and maybe the sender, and you get to open it up without clicking any links, and so you can check it out. So there's software solutions available. The other is education. Even if you're just a 5, 10, 25 employee company, having a process in place where you educate people about phishing, and that includes doing fake phishing. So the CEO sends out an email. It says, hey, I need you to look at this report, and here's the report. It's clicked on a link, and you click on that link, and a message comes up. Hey, this is the trial. You shouldn't have clicked on the link, because did you notice that the CEO's name was misspelled, or did you even notice that the CEO's email isn't internal, right? So they're really good training ways to keep us aware.
Right, to recognize that, those emails, it gets through the bots that set aside the spammy or the fishy email. And those go into our junk folder, or maybe some of this email doesn't even get through, does it?
Yeah, you're right. So Outlook and Gmail, they have these applications already built in that will put things into the junk folder. But you do need to check that, right? Because some junk is not junk, and but on top of that, organizations should add another layer, and not only what comes out of the box with Outlook or Gmail or Yahoo Mail, but another layer within their organization to quarantine things that look dangerous. I'll give you an example that just happened today.
Wow.
So yeah, my wife was on her laptop. She works out of her home office, and she called me in because she got this really weird message that said, "Hey, you've been attacked. There's this virus on your computer. Do not shut down the computer because that'll just spread the virus." And it's one of these really nasty messages that fills your screen and puts you in great fear. And so, these things happen all the time. Luckily I could tell it was in the browser. It wasn't even, it hadn't taken over the computer. It was in the browser message. And then it says, here's an 800 number, call Microsoft, and Microsoft will help you fix this, right? I thought, I'm going to have a little fun with this. So I called the number and I said, hey, who's this? And they said, oh, this is, you could tell this person was offshore. By the accent that they had, and they could have been onshore as an employee with an accent, but I wanted to be sure. So I said, oh, who's this? And they said, and I said, oh, who are you with? And they said, with Microsoft. I said, oh, where are you? What location? They said, oh, we're in Redmond, Washington. And now you and I know that, number one, Microsoft doesn't do this for people. Somebody gets a cyber attack, Microsoft doesn't immediately send them a message that says, call us and we'll fix it, right? Point one. Point two, Microsoft does not have a call center in Redmond, all right? They have a call center in places that are less expensive. So I ran out of time. I was going to have a little more fun with him and said, look, hey, which building? Because I used to do work for Microsoft and I was located in XYZ building. Tell me what building you're in, right? So instead, I just wanted to end it. And I said, okay, do me a favor. You're in Redmond, Washington. Call me back on a number that has the Redmond, Washington area code. I said, so, if we're going to continue this conversation, I might want your services. Call me back. You have my number because you can see it on caller ID. Call me back from a number, and that person hung up. So I knew that wasn't real.
I like that little that quiz. Yeah, call me up from a Redmond, Washington.
Yeah, but I'm not making fun of making light of what you're talking about. It's the cybersecurity thing is very important. I'm really big on what's called XDR. Oh. And that's data response, also sometimes called MDR, managed data response. So they put an X on it because it's even bigger than managed, So organizations, small to medium, have affordable solutions that is a monthly fee. It's essentially cybersecurity as a service. You don't have to license and worry about your CrowdStrike implementation and make sure you implement it properly. You don't have to worry about protecting all of your endpoints, all of the laptops and systems that are on the servers. They do that for you. They have a security operations center, a SOC, and they're actually, it's as if you're a huge organization with your own security operations center and your cybersecurity team, but they provide that service. So, I recommend those for organizations that are small to medium that can't invest a lot in protecting themselves or want to get a solution that is turnkey.
Right. Can we talk about how sometimes an attack isn't deployed for a while?
Yes.
So a company may not know that they have this foreign software sitting on their server or somewhere in their technology architecture.
Right. There's, yes, first of all, I acknowledge that happens, and it happens a lot. Generally, if you let's say it was a phishing email, and let's say it's a medium-sized organization where there's damage that could be done, and there's data that could be stolen, or they're big enough to where they might pay a ransom. So generally, that's where that's happening. The person in the basement who's targeting small companies generally doesn't spend time on that sort of thing, because they want to hit you, watch your reaction, and move on, or whatever it is that they're doing. But for an organization that is especially vulnerable, that's what happens. So you click on that link and nothing happens. You click on the link and it says link is broken, right? You go, oh, okay, well, never mind. I'll just delete that email. But what's happened is something went out to the server, and it's sitting on the server in some account, and it's a sophisticated piece of software. And the reason it went out there was you clicking on the link presented your ID and credentials, but you and I don't have administrative credentials. We can't get into the things that the attacker wants to get into. So there's a piece of code sitting out there on a server someplace, and it's a program, and it's running. And it could be sending out messages internally to make it look like it's an internal message. It could be looking for places where it can find credentials to log into a server and do more damage. So that's one reason that cyber attackers do that. Another reason is sophisticated systems exist. You and I are talking about them, license the right solution for you so it looks out for you. Well, these solutions will flag that entry point. But if it doesn't do anything, it can sit there for a while. So, you clicked on a link and you got a message, not only that the link is broken, but your automated internal system said, hey, Nalinia, hand slap, stop clicking on these links, right?
Oh, but I didn't do it.
but if nothing happened, that software isn't going to do anything else. It's just going to warn you, your internal software. So the cyber attackers are trying to prevent an immediate response. They're trying to hide out. So, the proverbial robber who locked himself in the bathroom, at Target, and then decided to rob the store after everybody went home. That's what they're doing. They're hanging out. They could be hanging out for months, by the way.
Oh, yes. Gathering data and just being part of the system, being very stealth-like.
That's right. So that's happening. Now, what about it? Well, you can hire organizations to do penetration testing, to do an assessment, a scan of your network, and to do penetration testing. So they call it pen testing. And so they do a scan of your network to look for these sorts of things. CrowdStrike is an example. We use that because that's one of the software packages they sell, is it's constantly scanning the network for things that are sitting out there that shouldn't be there. And then from a services standpoint, CrowdStrike and others, and that's the only one that comes to mind right now, but they do what's called penetration testing, pen testing, where your IT department licenses them to go in and try to hack into your network. Frequently, the head of IT, or it could be the CFO in a very large company, they're testing their IT department. So not even the CIO knows that this is happening. So usually the CIO knows. The CFO will call the CIO and say, we're going to do a pen test on the network. Don't tell anybody. And the CIO says, absolutely not. I'm not, because I want to know if my crew is effective. And so there's two executives that know about this. And this penetration testing is going on. And then they produce a report that is shared with the CIO and CFO, and then the rest of the team, especially the cybersecurity team. It's like, hey, we just got pen tested, and oh, by the way, they got into 5 areas where they're not supposed to. Let's fix those.
Right. Oh, excellent. So that's very proactive. In order to
there's a lot going on. Yeah,
that's right. That is a lot. That's very intriguing. So, but it's a controlled test, so they can mitigate. There's no damage that happens, but just the fact that they can just hang out and find play hide and seek.
Right. But let me ask you, Nalinia. So with your clients and contacts, and the group that you work with or interact with, what are they finding? What kind of issues are they finding? And they're trying to guard against or have issues with, either from a data privacy or a cybersecurity standpoint.
Right. So the issues that I get approached with are, well, basically that the computer's not working. It's working slowly. And their personal computers or their desktops are working slowly, and or there is an alert that pops up that says, you've been hacked. Call this number. And then the dreaded blue screen, right? Or in the olden days, the green screen. But it's gone too far at that point. There aren't any little, except for slow processing. That's probably the first sign that comes up.
Yes, and slow processing, if the computer we're using is pretty old and it's running an older version of Windows, many times the slow processing isn't an attack. It isn't pernicious. There's a lot of cookies that have been stored and unused. There are things sitting on the system in places where you and I never look in the system and in the operating system, and they're just slowing things down. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a cyber attack. There are services that legitimate services that will scan your computer and clean it up and get rid of that stuff. And some of them do it. I would use a legitimate service. So let's say, not to plug anybody, I'm using my HP laptop here, and I'm using my Dell laptop there. If I wanted an organization, a trusted organization, to speed up my laptop, I would go there. I wouldn't go to just anybody that I found on the web, or I would go to somebody trusted, like in your network or in my network, that we know are professionals in supporting small businesses. And have them, and just tell them, hey, look, my computer's slow, please clean it up. And they'll get rid of a bunch of stuff that is completely unnecessary, that's accumulated over time. Now, if there's been a breach, the blue screen, your computer's shutting down. One thing to do is to unplug it from the network. Unfortunately, we're all on Wi-Fi now, so there's not even an Ethernet cable, right? But back in the day, if I ever had that, and that's happened to me before, the first thing I did was I pulled that Ethernet cable out, so that it isn't heading out to the network now. And then at that point, my laptop is probably dead. But you brought up the best guardrail there, backups, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing backups, and if you're storing all your documents in the cloud, or even mirroring them, if you want them on your laptop hard drive, local drive, at least mirror them out to the cloud, so that when that blue screen comes up, you can just reload all of your applications from scratch. Microsoft Windows, an application from scratch, or Mac OS, whatever, and then download all the things from the cloud. That's the best way.
Yeah, that's great. So can we talk a little bit on another topic, of the topic of encryption and also VPN connections?
Okay.
So is it recommended to encrypt very sensitive information that you're transmitting, say, in an email to someone else?
Yes, it is. It is, if it is very sensitive, and if it is sensitive, let's say it's just PII, personally identifiable information is classified by CCPA and CPRA, or if you're working internationally with folks, then you need to look at the GDPR guidelines. So those folks are all three entities are very keen on protecting the personal information. And then, of course, if it has financial info.
Oh, yes. So and then it can be hijacked on the way too. So
that's correct. So so then the question becomes, how diligent do I need to be about that? Most of the time, we're sending emails, with documents attached, and people's addresses and email addresses and phone numbers.
And passwords.
Yeah, well, not password. I don't do that. But so that I think is a personal decision about encrypting, because then at the other end you want to make sure that the person can decrypt it. My recommendation is, at the very least, for contracts and sensitive documents, go ahead and pay the fees for something like a DocuSign or one of those competitors that sends the information in a secure way to the correct person.
Oh, good recommendation.
Yeah, and then now you mentioned, besides encryption, there was a second part to your question.
There's a VPN connection.
Oh, VPN, yeah.
That's can you explain what that is for our audience?
Sure. So VPN is a virtual private network, and many organizations used to be limited to large organizations, but I've seen it with small to medium. It's a service that you can sign up for. There's many available, and your login into the corporate network. Let's say you're a contractor for somebody, and or an employee for an organization, and you're going to work remotely. Then it's best that organization has licensed some kind of a VPN, virtual private network technology, that you use to log into their network. What the VPN does is it has several factors of identification, not only your ID and your password, but it usually has a code that you have to key in that changes every few seconds, and it changes every few seconds on the server side as well. And so when the codes match, it knows that you're the right person. It also tracks multiple logins. So, Nalinia's logged in from Irvine, California. Oh, but look, she's also logged in from El Paso. I'll bet there's something wrong with that, right? So,
yes.
So it tracks that sort of thing, and it probably wouldn't even let the El Paso person in, but that's an example. So VPN is recommended when people are logging into your system. You and I are on a third party, StreamYard. Yeah. You and I can be on Zoom, or we could be on Teams. Not necessary to do VPN. We're not using a sensitive network that can be attacked just because you logged into StreamYard, I logged into StreamYard. I can tell you, StreamYard's got its act together, and they know, they're protecting themselves. But when it's your own network, your own server, or a server that's based on Amazon Web Services, AWS, or Microsoft Azure Cloud, you want to work with AWS to implement VPN, work with Microsoft Azure to implement VPN, or do it on your own, because you should have something that protects your network from unauthorized people getting in.
That sounds like a very good solution for many companies, especially.
It is, yeah, and it's more affordable, but of course, cyber criminals have figured out ways to work around it. So you have to be diligent about keeping users updated with the right software and patches and things like that.
Oh, Mark, you're so comprehensive with your answers. I'm really enjoying this very much. Oh my gosh, the time has just flown. But I got one final question before I let you go, and then I would like you to do a recap of.
Sure, you bet.
And the final question has to do with biometrics, so fingerprints and
oh my,
facial recognition from our computers. And where is that taking us? How is there going to be more biometric identifiers? Are we going to have chips in ourselves that can transmit signals to our?
Oh my. Boy, you've really gone down a path there, Nalinia.
I know. I'm in the sci-fi world.
Yeah. So biometrics for computer access and verification have been around for a very, very long time, probably longer than AI. And we're all talking about AI as if it's brand new. So biometrics has been around and has been effectively used, and will continue to be used. it's hit the it's hit the consumer level, of course. If you and I are iPhone users, then we log in using our face. So so that's into important systems. For example, I've allowed my my medical record portal. I won't name it because we're on an open line. My medical record portal to allow me to use Face ID to log in. Okay, and that's really, really personal information there. It's everything about me from a medical standpoint. But the capability was there, and so I used it. We're going to continue to see that. But there's lots of security in place. Apple keeps updating, and so that I can't just show a picture of myself to my phone and it'll recognize it, that sort of thing. So I'm not worried about it. My biggest concern is with the deep fakes on AI that could create biometric information that then is used to get into systems. I think the companies that use biometric information need to worry about that, especially with deep fake, face login. But now, as far as Elon Musk's chip, I'm not too worried about that. I think it's a way off. I'm one of the few people that I get in trouble with parties because when people talk about flying cars, I keep telling them how far off they are. And when people are talking about self-driving cars, so the chip in the brain thing is way off for you and me to make a decision to implement it. But it is a cool concept. But the biometrics is going to stick around.
Yes, we live in exciting times. My gosh, and we haven't even touched on artificial intelligence, and I know you're expert in that arena too.
Well, you should set up 3 sessions at least on AI.
Okay, yeah.
Not only because of the depth and breadth of it, but if you interview 3 people about AI, you're going to get 5 or 6 different opinions. So yeah. Hey, for closing out, I know we talked a lot about a number of things, but let me just stress, since we kind of started out that way, and I got the Privageo logo behind me. For the folks that and the folks that view this, the data privacy is very important. Litigators, agencies, and things, but also from an ethical standpoint, we want to be good stewards of the private information that our clients and employees have entrusted us with, and it is not difficult to get a handle on that. If you use organizations like Privageo, because they give you the roadmap, and then we step back and say, hey, you take it from here. And then you look at the roadmap and you go, oh, we can do this, but we need help with the third party thing. We'll do that, and then we'll go away. So it's a bit of a commercial, I know, but I'm passionate about the data privacy thing, especially with CCPA and CPRA. I didn't even mention that there, I think, are now 16 other states that have passed laws.
My gosh.
And now, Nalenia, they're all different. And so an organization that does business in all the states needs to worry about, are they compliant with CCPA and CPRA? And what about the Denver one that just passed? So they need to be compliant with all of those. And then let's wait to see what the federal government does, because that'll create another wrinkle.
Yes, this is quite a task, keeping up with all of the changes legislatively as well as technologically, not to mention how we operate with our technology as human beings. My gosh, Mark.
I see a scroll. Yes, I see a scroll at the bottom. Did you put that in?
Yes, I did. I would.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
To get
it has my networking email, but people can use that to get to my Privageo stuff as well. So thank you.
All right. Yeah. So do check Mark Kasperowicz's LinkedIn profile, and I wanted you to reach out to him if you want.
Thank you, Nalenia. Thanks.
My pleasure. And maybe we'll have you back to talk about artificial intelligence.
You bet. I'll come and give you my 3 opinions on.
Oh, all right. Fantastic. All right, Mark. So we'll see you another time then. And thank you so much for this rich program.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Okay.
Bye. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks
Bye.
so much. All right, everybody. So that's Mark Kasperowicz. He's a gem and knows a lot about a lot of things. And I did mention that he is also an expert on artificial intelligence. And I will invite him back to give us some information and his perspectives in that arena. So in the meantime, let me just let you know that next week we are going to be touching on artificial intelligence and marketing. And the program will be yours truly. So we'll explore that area a little bit. We can only touch the major points at this time, but I want to give you a good feel as to where marketing and AR are and how they are intersecting, and possibly how things will go in the near future. Alrighty then, so we'll see you next Wednesday, 4 o'clock, Artificial Intelligence and Marketing. Thanks so much and have a great week.